Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And today's episode is the 29th Instagram Live that we've done. And out this week is Kurt O'Toole from Urban Elements Landscape, so another landscaper from Geelong. We've got, I think there might be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12 questions today. So it's a good bunch of questions that came through and a couple of rippers in there. So we'll get stuck into the first one, which is from Weber Landscapes. Any plans on getting a second crew going? And if not, how come? I don't have any plans because I'm not good at running other crews. So as much as the idea of it sounds enticing, so when you got one crew running, things are going well, you think I could just add another crew and this one will look after themselves and I can keep an eye on these other ones and double your money because you're still going to work out of one shed and a lot of things you only need one of. But my experience is that it never seems to work out like that. So I've tried it a few times, and just the productivity just goes down. And it's not like the guys I've got are awesome guys who work, so there's nothing to do with them. It's just I think you need to have systems in place, and I don't know. It's just a different way of doing things rather than having a small crew like we have. Just a different mindset and different ways of going about things. So, like, I'm looking to put on an apprentice at the moment, and I'm thinking, do I put on two at the same time? You can have one mature age and one junior one, and if one doesn't work out, it's fine. But if you get two good ones, then that's a dream result. But then the other side of me says maybe that's a bit too fast, so better off doing it slower, less people. So always having that argument within my head about how many staff to put on, and have different crews, but what I will be doing is just sort of consolidating on what we've got and just get profitable first, and then we can start worrying about adding more to it after that. So being patient, I think, is a good thing to do. And you might think 2 years down the track, if you're going to plan out that long, 2 years might be a long time, but if you think back how long you've been in business, like I've been doing this for 14 years, 2 years is not a long time. And I plan on doing a lot longer. So, you've just got to be patient. And eventually I may end up having multiple crews going because I won't be able to do everything on site myself anyway. So I'll have to get off the tools and then have to have more people so that they can just support my wage. Because as Kurt mentions in his episode this week, he got up to 20 guys because he was injured and couldn't work. So he had to have a lot more people working so that he could get a wage from the business as well. But what I would do if I was going to do it would be to get a business coach who has done it so you can get advice. So try and do something for a change where you're not just making it up as you go. Newer Design said, what warranty or guarantee do landscape contractors and designers place on plants? It's not something I thought of too much because we don't have an official one that we put on plants. But basically, like, I'll just sort of do the right thing. If there's plants that have died because of something we should have done, then I'll just replace it. So it's extremely rare for it to happen. Now I think about it. Because I know a few podcasts I've listened to, they were talking about, you have to have a certain warranty on your plants or people won't sign up to you, but that's, in America, they're talking about that. But it doesn't seem to be that much of an issue here in Australia, and certainly not on any of the projects that we've done. So we don't have a formal warranty or guarantee. And thankfully we haven't had to carry through with it. And Robinson Landscape Design said too many external factors involved with plants being damaged. So that's a good point. So, because, plants can look like they're dying because they're too dry when they're actually too wet. So the client might be watering it like every day and then thinking that the leaves are starting to go brown, so they start watering it more, and then it's just getting even worse because watering it twice a day. So there are certain things like that make it impossible to provide that sort of a warranty for it, because then you've got to go down the path of giving really strict instructions on how to look after it. But plants aren't that like, there's no black and white rules about how to look after a plant. other than saying give it water when it needs water and don't water it if it doesn't need it. But that's a very grey description of how to do it. So, yeah. So I think Robinson Landscape Design's got a good point about just too many variables to be able to do it. But that's where it comes back to if you know you've done something that the client couldn't have done anything better for to look at keep the plant alive. So if it's something you could have done better, then you'd want to replace it to keep a good reputation. Greg from Outside Space said, "What is your definition of the landscape trade? What is your definition of the landscape trade? Are plants really important in the trade?" So that was just coincidental that backs up that question. But I reckon my definition changes. But plants definitely are important, I think, in the trade because it seems to be one of the biggest or most broad trades or group of trades. It's almost like in the building industry, if you say you're a builder, the builders are like, and a lot of people think builders are actually the ones who are building the house, but they're sort of more of like a project management business where they're getting everyone to come in and build it. That's similar to what a lot of landscapers do. But most of the time we also do all those different trades ourselves. So the definition of the landscape trade is everything outside of the house. I've heard that said before. So we build everything that's outside of the house. And plants are part of that. So it does help. It definitely is I suppose everything is that we do is a specialised role, a specialised trade. Because I was about to say plants are a specialised trade to be good at them and know what you're doing with them. But yeah, that's everything is within landscaping. So yeah, definitely think plants are important and actually the hero of most landscaping projects. But I explain to people how when I'm telling them that we don't mow lawns as part of our landscaping business, that I actually tell them we need a business. We need a building license to be able to do what we do. So that sort of explains a little bit more about what we do and don't do. It's Phil Smith says, "What was the hardest part becoming self-employed? Any recommendations?" Well, I found the hardest part not until I started putting on multiple employees. So when I started out on my own, I was just a sole trader, so I hadn't started the company yet. When you're doing it like that, any profit is classified as your income. So I had to put 25 grand into my super, which is the maximum you could put in 1 year, because I was making too much money in the early days. But then the more employees I put on, the less money I make. So I think the hardest part that I've found is understanding that 2 people don't work twice as fast as one, and 3 people don't work anywhere near as fast as 3 times as one. And you've got to quote based on your employees' abilities. So you can't just say, I do 9 square meters of crazy paving a day. So, if you've got to think about your employee A might do 4 square meters a day, but employee B might do 2 square meters a day. So you can't just pigeonhole everyone into doing the same amount, regardless of whether it's what you do or not. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge I've found is understanding how much your employees can do, and also the amount of downtime that you have, the amount of time people are getting paid to not work, like when you're traveling to a job or loading and unloading the ute in the morning or evening, just a million different things that you do that's not necessarily quoted for. So yeah, it's easy enough to start out, but then it gets harder as you go along. And recommendations, I don't know whether it's hard to say whether a business coach is going to give you those bits of advice, but yeah, because I haven't had one. So perhaps talk to someone who has had a business coach in the early days and see if they're helpful or not, or if they think it's a good idea. Or you could just talk to someone and get a bit of a unofficial mentor So I've had Kurt, who's on this week's episode, I've said that a couple of times, that he's like an unofficial mentor to me. So I've spoken to him more about business than anyone else in the industry. So he's helped out a lot. And there's a lot of times where he was saying I should be charging X amount. And I thought that there's no way you could charge that much. And then, a year later, that's exactly how much I'm charging, because I've realized I'm not making money charging less than that. So, it's good to get advice and then actually take the advice. Now, Leaf by Leaf said, do you answer work calls or emails if you have taken time off / gone on holidays? I do when I want to. So I keep it pretty flexible. I don't sort of have hard times where I won't do anything for a certain amount of days or whatever. If there's something that I want to, like if there's an email I'm waiting on, or if my guys are working while I'm on holidays, I'll still respond to emails or calls if I need to. But it's a personal decision. So if we're doing something together as a family, and I'm not going to take time away from my family to do that. It's just if I'm because my kids sort of look after themselves and play together, so I don't need to be interacting with them 100% of the time when we're doing things. And when we go on holidays, my wife would probably just prefer to watch TV as well. So, there's a lot of time where you can do stuff like that. But I don't, like if the phone rings, I won't answer it if I don't want to answer it. It's the same on weekends and after hours. Sometimes clients have called on weekends and after hours and I've answered it. Sometimes I don't. And it's just based on whether I want to answer it or not. So you don't need to be a slave to your business. You can have, so there's a lot of times where people say that they go into business to have the flexibility to be able to work when they want and do what hours they want. But a lot of times that's not the case. But in terms of phone calls and emails and that sort of thing, I find that is the case where you can do what you want with it. You can, if you want to answer the call, answer it. If you don't, wait till business hours. Stephen Ireland said, if you could pick 2 landscapers from the podcast guests to add to the install crew working on the tools, who would you pick? I did plan on going through the list to see if I'd change my selection, because I replied back to him because I love the question so much, but I didn't go through the list. So I'll have to go with my original 2 picks, which came to mind first. So I would pick Steve Taylor and Dan Foreman to have on my team. So he did say working on the tools, but I would get Steve working on the tools 2 days a week and doing designs 3 days a week, because his designs are obviously phenomenal. And then when we worked with him on the block and then seeing what he's done at his house, he's also a machine on the tools. And then Dan Foreman seems to be quite an all-rounder as well, so he can get involved with designs and do construction as well. So Steve also said he was going to ask about having a team of 5 all-star crew. So I might answer that next week. I'll put a bit more thought into it and come up with a team of 5 podcast guests who I would have in a all-star crew of 5. Cam from Abcam Horticulture said, are you entering the LV Awards this year? And would you consider being on the board at any stage? So LV's Landscape Victoria, they're an industry association. They close the what are they called? The awards entries close on the 11th of August. So I've still got 5 days from now. But I was humming and hawing about it, but I don't think I will enter this year. Just can't be bothered, to be honest. Last year there was some of the categories they didn't announce a winner because they didn't think anyone's gardens that were entered were up to the quality to be classified as a winner. So the person who got the highest score, they gave like a high commendation or something like that, which I think is insane. It seems a bit pretentious, and it makes me not want to enter into that, because when you're putting yourself out there to submit one of your projects to win an award, a lot of the time people will be feeling a bit self-conscious about it anyway, and picking it apart and thinking, maybe it's not worth it. And then for them to not pick a winner is insane. And I gave an example to Cam when I was telling him about that Adam Cooney won a Brownlow medal. So they did not give the award out that year because he was the worst player to ever win it. So I don't know if they're changing that this year. I hope they do. But I probably won't put one in. And it's also because I'd rather submit a construction project that we've designed, even though it's not nothing to do with the design. I just feel more ownership about it then. So hopefully one of the projects we're doing this year might turn out right and we can submit it next year. But I also don't like, I'm not a big fan of awards nights. Like everyone just turning up and drinking free alcohol that you paid for, but just loud noises and loud music. You're yelling to talk to people. I can't hear a word anyone's saying at the best of times, let alone when there's all the loud music going on. So yeah, the awards night's not my cup of tea. So even if I did submit one, I probably wouldn't go to it. But yeah, 99% sure I won't be submitting one this year, but probably will in the future. And in terms of being on the board at any stage, I did think about it briefly, but I don't think that I would. I haven't got enough time for living the life that I already do. So adding 12 or 11 meetings a year on top of that, as well as the time you've got to commit to it, isn't something that I would be willing to add to the already overflowing plate. And also, I don't think I could stand how much, like everyone who goes on the board are obviously passionate about the industry and wanting to help it out, but then their hands are tied because of certain bureaucracy with governments and that sort of thing about changes they can make, because there's certain laws and regulations and acts that they need to follow, which are usually quite rigid. So it'd just be too frustrating, I reckon, to be part of, as much as everyone who goes on there wants to help. Yeah, it'd just be too annoying. So probably not. Shane O'Brien 05 said, "Is Dan Foreman the new Jamie Durie?" I haven't seen any Men at Work style strip shows from Dan Foreman yet, but perhaps at the Melbourne Home Show, that's what's going to be happening on the main stage. So if he was to do that, then I would say yes, he has taken the crown of being the new Jamie Durie. Certainly got the design skills and construction underway, but I also haven't seen him without a shirt on, so I'll reserve my judgment on that answer. Andy came and said, "What's the best method for a base when doing stone steppers?" So it depends on what stone you're doing and how, and whether they're big enough to be able to be a stepper on their own. So if you're doing stuff that's small and you want to do a group of different pieces of the stone to make one larger stepper, then doing a concrete base is the best way to go, so that you can support them all on the one piece laid on mortar on top of the concrete base. But if it's just a single stepper, like for example, the bluestone rounds, they're the most common one to getting around. You could just lay them on a crushed rock and mortar base. I think you might get some slight movement out of it, but you wouldn't notice it. And they've usually got plants around it, or if it's got gravel around it, then that's going to move anyway. So it varies. And it also, like, we get a lot of designers specifying to do a concrete base under them, which is overkill a lot of the time. But yeah, that's what's on the design, so that's what we do. But I think if you're doing bluestone steppers or steppers that support themselves, then you could just lay them on a mortar base on a compacted crushed rock bed. And yeah, there's it's a bit overkill to do it any other way. Acropolis Now said, "I've got a design and engineering background. Should I still do an apprenticeship or just jump in?" So it depends what sort of design. It probably doesn't depend what sort of design, but I just would wonder what sort of design it is. And it also probably depends on where you're wanting to go. Like, when you're wanting to start your own business once you've finished your apprenticeship, because then it could make the process quicker to get your building license if you have got an apprenticeship. So then you get qualified. But because I don't know how that's going to change, because I know when I applied, you didn't need to be qualified. You could just have a certain number of years. You might have needed to have, for example, it might be 5 years if you're qualified, and it has to be 7 years if you're not qualified. So you need to have more experience, more years under your belt if you're not qualified. But I don't think, other than this, if you can get a job without doing an apprenticeship and you're getting to do all the different roles within landscaping, then there's no point doing an apprenticeship if you've got a job with someone, but a lot of places won't put you on as a labourer if you've got no skills. I certainly would, because you can put on an apprentice who's got no skills and pay them a hell of a lot less, and then they don't count towards your work cover, and there's just a whole lot of benefits. So the only bad thing is that when you're an apprentice, you've got school, but some like the Murray Valley one, there's no days that they go off to school like a lot of TAFEs do. So there's different ways you can go about that, but like even though I've done an apprenticeship and I put apprentices on, I don't think they're the be all and end all. It matters more about your skills and what you can do. So I would just jump in if you've got the opportunity to do that. Because again, the same deal. Like if someone was looking for a qualified landscaper, and you had ended up jumping in, and then you got 5 years experience and you've got all these skills, I'm sure they'll put you on. If they want, there's a lot of other people that would, because it's more about skills than a piece of paper and what you can produce. And the last question is from Boutique Timeless Landscape, saying, what's a style or theme of landscape that you've not installed but want to? I've just done a Japanese design, which there's only a part of the design that's Japanese style, but that's Emma, our designer, did that and it looks pretty awesome. So just in the quoting stage of that at the moment, but I'd be looking forward to doing that because it looks pretty cool. I did see Simon from the Planter Space. I saw one of his posts and he's got some raked gravel in there, which looks phenomenal. So we might even add some of that to this design potentially if it goes ahead. Just a little detail that makes a huge difference. I don't know how he did it or what sort of gravel it was, so I'd have to pick his brain for that. But yeah, I reckon doing a Japanese style garden would be pretty cool. And yeah, I don't think we've done any at all. I think the most Japanese I've done is putting in a Japanese maple, which is it's probably a bit more involved than just doing that, I would have thought, in a Japanese garden. We did put in some rocks as well, learned a little bit about rocks. So yeah, that would be one of my styles I'd like to do. And it's not just because my wife is part Japanese. So shout out to Sharon. And that was it. So thank you very much for everyone who submitted a question. We'll do it again during the week. And as I said, Curto Tools episode is out this week. So another landscaper from Geelong. And then got some more that I'm recording this week. So I'm not sure which one will be out next week, but we'll see when they come out.